Thank you for the opportunity to talk about my absolute favorite dive destination on the planet. So North Carolina wreck diving is a passion of mine, and I love sharing it with others. So that's what I'm here to hopefully entice you to do, is come share it with me. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Florida. I was one of those lucky tomboy kids that got to fish and go boating. And so after all of that, I wanted to see what was under the water. So I got certified in 1981. And that was a long time ago. And now I have proof because my very first dive gear is now featured in the diving museum in the Keys. So that really reinforces my age. How young you got started. There you go. Thank you. So I studied biology and marine science at Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, and it happens to have the only maritime search and rescue team associated with a college in the country, and they work with the Coast Guard. So I got to train as a coxswain and a recovery diver. Uh, and then I went on to do more sea time and research on expeditions with Woods Hole and Sea Education Association. I taught in the Keys, and I did everything to really become a working marine biologist. I became a NAUI instructor in 87 and worked on boats and teaching so I could put myself through grad school. But uh-oh, a little feedback. You're not muted. Is he muted? Okay, thank you. But that got to be a bit challenging. And so I took all of my research and lab skills and I went into healthcare, but I kept my passion for the oceans and diving through teaching and dive travel in clubs like this. And so here I am all these years later, um, still getting out to places like the graveyard of the Atlantic. So why is it so spectacular? Well, it's a destination that is actually one of the best in the world, like I've said, but don't take my word for it. It has been ranked by many others besides me. And number one for big animals, number one for wreck diving, advanced diving, number one for best value. It's in our backyard and it's easily accessible, and it's world-class diving. When the stars align, the currents and the viz is right, it's hard to beat. Oh, hello. We're having a little technical trouble. I don't know. One second. So there we go. So what I'd like to talk about tonight is about the location, what makes it so unique, the wrecks that we routinely visit there, the amazing sea life, and how you can join the adventure. There we go. Okay, so the coast of North Carolina, or the Outer Banks of North Carolina, is a chain of barrier islands that stretches from the south end of Virginia along the coast of North Carolina, about 300 miles of coastline. And it has three prominent capes that poke out: Cape Hatteras, Cape Lookout, and Cape Fear. And these prominent capes or headlands that poke out into the Atlantic, they cause currents to swirl and sand to shift and create often very treacherous navigational challenges to this day, even with modern technology. So in part, these capes and the currents and the traffic has created what we know as the graveyard of the Atlantic. There's potentially 3,000 to 5,000 shipwrecks. 5,000 on the upper end. I think there's thousands, though, we can say for sure. And you'll see in this slide that the vast majority are between Cape Lookout and Cape Hatteras. So why so many? Oops. Why so many? So we have warm Gulf Stream water heading north along the coast, and we have the cold Labrador Current heading south, and they meet right around Cape Hatteras. And this mixing causes currents. The opposing warm and cold currents cause a lot of turbulence. So other eddies spin off of that. Then you add storms to that, and you get shifting shoals and inlets. For example, Diamond Shoals, which is there, is notorious for continuing to move and really messing with mariners that way. So like I said, to this day, people traveling through this area need to be very, very careful. So the other thing that has created numerous wrecks, and many that we will dive on, are the wars that took place off the coast. Okay, so there are Civil War, World War I, and World War II wrecks. So here's a just a snapshot of the ghost fleet of the Graveyard of the Atlantic with identified shipwrecks on all those little dots. And we will be focusing on this area right here, which is off of Cape Lookout. So what I like to do here is, oh, sorry, it didn't display so well, but I have divided the wrecks into 3 groups. That's how we normally dive them. So the top there that's kind of covered, it says inshore. So inshore are a few wrecks that we commonly go to. They're in a little shallower water, a little closer in. And if the weather's too bad offshore, they're great to go to, but I also love to go to a couple of them when the weather is great and the viz is good, because they're a real treat under those conditions. Then there's offshore south, and those are some of people's favorites, and that's where the famous U-boat, the U-352 is. We have the Aeolus, the Spar, Schurz, and the Hutton, also called the Papoose. And then we have my favorite location, which is offshore east, and that's where the Carib Sea and the Atlas live. Now, these inshore wrecks, like I said, the average depth about 60 feet. The viz there is usually a little less, 15, 40 feet, but still great for training. And dive boats go there regularly with students. The water temps are a little cooler there because the Gulf Stream tends to stay a little further offshore. It's about an hour boat ride, and there's also lots of old ledges nearby, so fossil hunting is a fun thing to do. We see lots of rays, eels, octopus, sandbar sharks, which travel solo. The occasional sand tiger, they don't hang around inshore so much. They're in the offshore wrecks. And then lots of fish, jacks, bait fish, spade fish, etc. So lots to see. So one of the wrecks that we go to periodically is called the Hutton. Its real name is the Ario. People are trying to get used to that. It had been misidentified for quite a long time. It was a tanker that was on its way up the East Coast, and on March 15th of 42, she got torpedoed by U-boat 158 and was able to send out a distress signal before the U-boat came back and just kept pounding on it for another half an hour. And miraculously, 30 of the 38 sailors survived. But because it was inshore and in shallower water, it became a hazard to navigation. So this wreck was dragged and torn down intentionally to make it less of a hazard. So now it's a very rubbly wreck, but it's fun. Great for skill building with navigation, running reels, and a great place to find a lot of the smaller critters that need lots of hiding places. Octopus, eels, and around this area are ledges that you can find shark's teeth or meg teeth on, and especially after a storm. It's fun to go there. All right. Oops. Oh, thank you. You did it for me. Thank you. So the Indra. So the Indra is an artificial reef. So actually, let me clarify. So for those wreck diving sticklers out there, the use of the word wreck is supposed to be restricted only to those vessels at the bottom that found their way there through a storm, active war, something like that. Okay. When they are sunk intentionally, they're artificial reefs. We just call them wrecks, but wanted to point that out. And that the Indra is one of the nicest artificial reefs around. It's got a lot of superstructure. And when the weather is nice and the viz is good, I try to encourage people to go there. You can get a nice long soak and play around in this great superstructure. You can see how much relief there is in that center picture. And there's lots to see. So I like to try to get there if we can, at least a couple times a season. And for training dives, it's phenomenal. Here's some more from the Indra. Lots to swim through and explore. All right, offshore south. So here it's a little deeper. The viz on average is better. But again, once the Gulf Stream moves in, it bumps it up to, sometimes well over 100 feet. Water temps are a little bit warmer on average, and it does take a little longer to get out there, about an extra hour. We see a lot of the same critters here, but more sand tigers, more huge schools of spadefish, jacks, a lot more action. We'll have dolphins periodically in large pods hanging out with us, not so much in the water, but they'll follow the boat around and entertain us at surface intervals. So it's actually a nice collection of wrecks in a relatively small area. So we have an assortment to choose from. The Aeolus is one of the most popular, and anyone who's been to the Aeolus will be able to tell you about the ballroom that the sharks love. And if you're lucky enough to catch a few sharks swimming around in there, and you just hang out at the outer edge and watch them circle with the light coming through, it's phenomenal. So in the lower left picture there, you can see it's almost like there's what is it? No, disco, yeah. But I was thinking of like I don't know, a window, Yeah, and the bait fish swirling in there with the sharks, just really amazing. So it was the cable layer, which is why we have these big round holes. So the big coils of cable were down in the bottom of the ship, and they were fed out through these holes. So this is the stern of the ship. So you'll see in the diagram, the upright stern section on the left of the diagram, that's where the ballroom is. Now, we also had some phenomenal dives on the bow section. And this ship was so big and now that it's spread apart, these are two separate dives. You can't swim from the bow to the stern very easily. On a rebreather with a scooter, you can make it, but for what we do, we normally divide that into two separate dives and enjoy them separately. All right, so a little bit more of the Aeolus. So there's plenty to look at, to swim around and see. And when the sharks join you, it's phenomenal. And if you're really getting comfortable down there and you don't want to leave, there are even facilities should you need them. All right, U-352. This is probably the most famous wreck on the Crystal Coast. It's been written up in books. It'll certainly transport you back in time. So this was one of the German U-boats that was terrorizing the coast, and now she sits in about 115 feet of water on the sand, listing a little bit to starboard. And I think everybody should see it at least once. There's a little challenge with this wreck as opposed to some of the others in that it is little comparatively. It doesn't have the superstructure, so it doesn't give you much to hide behind if there's a current. And in low vis with a current, it's easy to maybe get swept off the wreck, and there's nothing around it. So we go there when the conditions are right. So it is less diveable than some of the other wrecks. So if we get a window to dive it, we'll take it. But some weekends we won't be able to make it there. But it's super easy to circumnavigate. And if you do like taking pictures, there's nothing more iconic than the conning tower. And here's our crew. There's there's Chris, Kathleen, and a bunch of buddies there on the conning tower on a really good day. You could see all the way to the surface. And I had to put this picture in the lower left corner. That's my little brother and I, and we've both been divers. Well, he got certified after me, but so we've both been divers like 30 some years. This was the first time last year that we dove in North Carolina together, and his wish was to get out to the sub, so we made it. All right, offshore east. So again, this is my favorite area. There's 2 wrecks out here, which I absolutely love. And they, for a couple different reasons. So, it is a kind of a special area. And one of the things that many people don't know is it's part of the Monitor Marine Sanctuary. This is a national protected area. And so our 2 little wrecks here are in the lower right-hand corner of the National Marine Sanctuary. So these wrecks have been mapped by NOAA, and so you can see the mapping of the wreck in the upper right-hand corner. They've done very thorough diagrams of all of the wrecks within the Monitor Sanctuary. This, like I said, is my favorite wreck, and it's a old freighter, not too big, 260 feet long, and she was carrying a very heavy cargo of combustible manganese, and that combined with being torpedoed twice by that same U-boat, the U-158, center to the bottom there, right around Cape Lookout Shoals. So it's in a little shallower water than the offshore South wrecks, about 85 feet. And this seems to be a very favorite place for the sand tiger sharks. So one of the draws here is it's an easily navigable wreck in shallower water, so you get great bottom time, but the sea life here it's amazing. So here's some pictures from the last couple of years, and sharks galore. These are sand tigers, not tiger sharks. So they're very, very docile, even though they can look a little menacing when you get up close, because their teeth are all raggedy, and which is why they also go by the name of ragged tooth shark. But here we have a large number of sharks that stay there year round, but during the migratory season, they really close in ranks, and there can be many hundreds, and we were lucky enough to see that last year.
And
so
that migratory season during what month?
It starts around July, August, and then it tails off into early September. So this video, I hope it shows up online, is from a few years ago. And I'm showing this because it shows at depth. There's the iconic boilers, hard to miss. great for natural navigation. If you find those, you can easily know where you are on the wreck. Huge bait ball. Swimming through these bait balls is just so much fun. And the sharks just lazily swim around in these swirls of bait balls.
Do they not eat them?
Well, they do, but usually not while we're there. They feed at night. So here, this is an interesting phenomenon. So I showed you some video from the bottom right on the wreck. This gathering or shiver of sand tigers is at about 50 feet, and there's a slight thermocline, and the water above is warmer. So they're hanging out in the warmer water, and they're just resting. And so the smart little fish hang out around the sharks, because what predator is going to try to eat them when they're hiding behind a shark? So you'll see in this video, I do a 360, not the greatest video work. This was actually the first day of video with my new rig, so I was still figuring it out. But I wanted to show the perspective of that they're all in this clump. And that clump is right over the bow of the wreck. And that's where we were tied in that day. And just chilling. And I thought, why not? And I just swam right in there, and but you can. And being, slow and calm, they didn't mind. And it was a really unique perspective to see them that way from behind, and just how little it took for them to hang in the current like that. Just lovely. All right. So bait balls, lots of fun. And I've had people tell me that after a day of diving there, engulfed in bait balls, that they actually dreamt about, had like dreams of swirling bait balls. So very mesmerizing. So on the bottom, if you like to pick up shells and things and shark's teeth, have at it. There are thousands of shark's teeth on the bottom there around the Carib Sea. So the average sand tiger can lose about 1,000 teeth a year. So it gives, with that many sharks there, there's plenty of shark's teeth to go around. And we usually come home with quite a few. This is William. He's the owner of the boat we dive on, and also the captain at times. There's a few captains, but he loves collecting shark's teeth. So he is using my patented shark's tooth collecting device. And see the picture of that shark there? This shows that their teeth just eventually fall out. They come out when they're eating often, but this one was just ready to fall out, and it's just hanging there. And probably within a few minutes after that picture, it probably fell off. All right. So some of the other beautiful things on these wrecks that I appreciate, and I think it shows why there is such a robust population of sand tigers, is when you look underneath the superstructure, you will see big schools of fish, like Atlantic spadefish and jacks and things that support this huge ecosystem. And they're all thriving, which is lovely to see. All right, the Atlas. This is the neighboring wreck to the Carib Sea, and also mapped and surveyed. So this was a large tanker, also torpedoed, and it was carrying about 84,000 gallons or barrels of gasoline. And so when it was torpedoed, there was a bit of a fire. And thankfully, all of the, I think it was 32 of the 34 survived. and they actually launched 2 lifeboats, and they got away through the burning gasoline and were rescued. So this large wreck gives quite a bit of superstructure. It's called one of the darker wrecks because it is in 125 feet to the sand, but there's enough superstructure that we can stay up at about 85 to 95 feet and see a lot of great things. Something I've noticed in my years of diving these wrecks is that I've seen more baby sand tigers on the Atlas than anywhere else that I dive there. And this is a baby that I videoed and photographed in first time in 2021. And baby sharks have darker spots, just like a baby leopard, and as they grow, the spots will get more faint. So you'll see that in October of 2021, the picture on the left, that's the same time I took the video. And August of 2022, I took the picture on the right. And so when I was comparing my pictures later, I realized, I think that's the same baby shark. And sure enough, you can tell by the spots. So this is what Spot a Shark USA does. If you are into photography and citizen science, this is a really cool thing to do. Doesn't matter how artistically balanced and perfect your pictures are. If they show the shark and show its spots, and you can tell them where you took the picture, it helps them determine where these sharks go, because as others take pictures and send them in, they'll map them. So yeah, but connect the dots. That's excellent. I'm going to have to steal that. Ha. All right. So besides sharks, which are pretty big, and sometimes, when you're doing signals underwater, like, did you see that? And somebody goes like this, you're wondering, what did you just see? And often we'll see these big sandbar sharks cruise on through. They're noticeably different. They're bulkier, stockier, have a very large dorsal fin, and they travel solo. And they come in pretty quickly and they leave pretty quickly. So a little harder to take a picture of, but it's fun to watch them. And once in a while, we get treated to even larger critters like this manta that just came out of nowhere on the Carib Sea. The pictures aren't great because I barely had time to focus, and then it was gone. But I have proof it happened. So this is something a lot of people don't realize, is that these wrecks are covered with tropicals. We have the Gulf Stream that comes along and brings baby tropical fish up to these wrecks, where they have plenty of food and structure to hide in. So I think it's fascinating, the diversity that we see here. So these are many of these fish, like the juvenile angels and tangs and butterfly fish, are seen in the Florida and all through the Caribbean. So it's really nice to see them here. Obviously, there's lionfish, which are a problem everywhere, but here that you can spear them, and we often do, and enjoy some ceviche later. All right. So how do you see this much color down there? I said these are a little bit darker wrecks. Well, bring a light. There's color everywhere. There's a lot of reds down there, big red like gorgonians and sponges, and colonies of beautiful fluffy white hydrozoans. There are stony corals here too. They're encrusting, they're not base building. So you'll see in that picture where it says light, that one there, it's a stony coral next to a gorgonian. So there's lots of life to look at. And that's what also makes these wrecks really entertaining, even when the viz is bad. If you have 10 foot of viz, it's not a horrible dive. You can get up close and see so much stuff on these wrecks with your light, and do macro photography if you're still into that. So as long as it's safe, there's still stuff to see. And sometimes I like that because I get so caught up in all the sharks and big stuff that it makes me focus sometimes when the viz isn't outstanding. Starfish, multiple species in different colors. There's a blue one there. There's a slipper lobster there in the lower right. Blennies and anemones and all kinds of fun things. And then one of my favorites is octopus. And now and then they seem to be there in larger numbers. And one day, I think we had been diving the Hutton and it's rubbly, right? So I had been tying off a line and I guess I stirred something up and I came up with 4 baby octopus on me. So I felt bad because I don't think a couple of them made it back, but yeah, they're so fun to see. So like yes, yes, they were. What's that? Yeah, you see, there's one on my thumb. So I normally do not touch marine critters, but it was on my BC. Yeah, it hitched a ride up. All right, so that's a bit about the wrecks and what we'll see. So I want to talk a little bit about the logistics. So how do we do this? So we do our diving through Discovery. Discovery diving is one of the oldest diving organizations on the East Coast. I started diving with them in 1991, and the outside of the shop still looks basically the same. It's like an icon, and they have their marina right there and a hotel behind it. So Outrageous Diving Inc. owns the boat that we dive on, and Discovery owns the shop, and so they have a partnership. So I'll talk a little bit more about the boat in a minute. So preparing to go, there's a few things though about North Carolina diving that do make it different. This is offshore diving with seas, sometimes current, fluctuating viz and weather. So training is important. It is required that you have advanced open water. And they do like to see that our divers have at least 2 open water ocean dives in the past 12 months. It's not required that you demonstrate it, but it is required that you have had experience with deploying a buoy at some point. It's not the best time to learn if you need it out there. And weighting is really important here, especially for folks who may not be used to diving to these deeper depths. If you go in overweighted, it can be more dangerous out there. So we also highly recommend nitrox. So something that I find myself talking to people about quite a bit is nitrox, and if you do it just for this trip, it's worth it. So on a 100-foot dive on air, your no decompression limit is 20 minutes by the tables. On nitrox 30, which is what they pump down there, that's optimum for the depth that the max depth that we work there. The no decompression limit is 30 minutes. You get 10 extra minutes by the tables. Okay, so that's 40% more downtime. And you do 6 dives, that's a whole extra hour potentially that you can spend swimming around by using nitrox. Plus, you feel better, it's safer, and it extends your repetitive dive. So all good reasons to take a nitrox class. And the nitrox classes are easier than ever now. So it's an online.
You can do it while you're waiting for the water to warm up.
There you go. All right. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't use my animation stuff, but there you go. Okay, so let's talk about equipment. We do have some required equipment: a computer, you cannot dive tables here. They really want you to have a computer, and it does make sense. So any kind, as long as you know how to use it. Mm-hmm. It's surprising how many people come on board and then they ask, can you help me figure out my computer? And they don't even have the manual with them, and there's no internet out there. So that is one thing that I try to caution people about, is know your computer and play with it before you get out there. And know how to set it to nitrox. Have a surface marker buoy required with a spool or a reel. And recommended the lights. We talked about that, all the beautiful color, but it can also be a safety device for signaling. Cutting tool, people do fish out there. So fishing line is one thing to watch out for that cutting tool can help with. Gloves. Sometimes the line can be jerking up and down with the waves or the seas. So having gloves on is safer for your hands. And then a John line. So a John line is just it's an extra tool that can help you tie yourself onto the ascent and descent line in a current, or if you need to hang out to help someone, or if you accidentally go into deco and you need to hang out. So something else that I try to encourage people to think about differently if you've never been wreck diving is gear configuration and streamlining. I see a lot of dangly things that could get people into trouble, especially if they want to go through some of the swim throughs in the Aeolus and the Indra, et cetera. So being conscious of rigging for the environment. All right, so trip preparation. So now you've decided you want to go, and you're going to get ready before your trip. So remember, this is warm water diving, but north of Hatteras, it's quite chilly in the summer even. So here it surprises people that in the summertime it's in the low 80s. So you don't need to pack or you don't need to wear a lot of neoprene, but having layers I find is really helpful. So especially if we're going from inshore, or like offshore to inshore, or inshore to offshore, because there is that temperature difference. So then you can layer up if we go into the cooler water. May through June, I usually wear a 5 mil. And like in May, if I do feel a little chilled, I can add a vest under that and a little hood. July and September, a 3 mil or a 1 mil. It's very comfortable in July, August, September. Sun protection. You're on a boat with water reflecting the sunlight, so sunburns very possible and likely, especially if you take a nap, if you fall asleep on the deck. But I do want to just point out that sunscreen has been implicated in coral reef damage now pretty conclusively. And there are corals here, but even if there's not, your sunscreen that is not reef safe will likely get carried somewhere that there is a coral reef. So just being conscious of that. So I try to bring reef safe sunscreen on board to share in case people don't have any. Seasick prevention. When in doubt, medicate. I have seen some poor folks not feeling so good, and they decided to be brave even though they had the stuff in their hotel room. So I think that if you talk to your doctor, find out what might work best for you. There's a few things to choose from. And we also have these, I couldn't find the picture. So sorry, our lovely model here wearing these very fashionable glasses that actually help create a they do work. They create a false horizon. So we do keep those on board just in case. All right. So on board, they provide water, drinking water, hot water to rinse off your face and just get the salt off. But you'll want to bring your own food and drinks for the day, and there's plenty of room to eat and relax. And we share snacks, etc. During the surface intervals. So a typical dive day. This is a fairly large boat, 65 foot with twin diesels, so it gets us out there pretty quick. There's a captain and 2 crew, sometimes 3 when Beamer comes, and she's everyone's favorite crew person. She goes around spreading love, and I think she makes people who are seasick feel better. So we normally board at 6 or 7, depending on the season. So in the summer, we board earlier because they often run 2 trips. So May and June, we usually board at 7. We want to get rigged up. Rig and triple check your gear because there's no extras on board and the shop gets further and further away. So if you need anything, we can usually take care of it at the dock. And then we'll head out when everybody has signed in and has said their gear is all good to go. One thing I love about the way this operator runs the charter is using what's called a Carolina rig. I wish more operators did this. This is popular on the East Coast, but there are places like in Florida, in the Keys recently. I went wreck diving down there in January, and I think they could have benefited from this. So if you've never heard of this, a Carolina rig, it's dropped over the side to create a hang line and then a line that takes you directly to the anchor line that takes you directly to the wreck. So when you make your entry, you can get down onto that hang line, get situated, get comfortable, wait for your buddy. And it gives you a place to hang out before you get started. They guarantee you that if you follow that anchor line down, you will end up on a wreck. There are operators that do what's called hot drops, where they kind of circle around and you roll in and you just swim down as fast as you can. And if there's a current, sometimes you find the wreck, sometimes you don't. This is way better. Likewise, when you come up, you come up from depth, you find that sliding weight and you follow it up over to the hang line, and you've got a place to kind of gather and do your safety stop. And if there is no current and you can just hang out, it at least gives you a visual reference. So it's really nice to have there. There is also a emergency regulator hanging there. So in the middle picture, you'll see that one end of the Carolina rig has an emergency regulator. So should you find that you don't have enough air for your safety stop, you can use that. You just don't plan that into your dive profile. And then the other great thing about this boat is they do have very nice ladders, easy ladders to get on. Climbing up these ladders is much safer than other ladders that I've been on. And so I think, yeah, it's a great rig. All right. So surface intervals, that's something else that, makes this trip sometimes special. On a calm day, we'll see dolphin, cannonball, jellyfish. We can go snorkeling and look around. So it makes it a nice dive day when you have that flexibility to even get in the water, weather permitting. All right. And the other thing that I like to point out is North Carolina diving is very weather dependent, and there have been some seasons I don't see any wood. Oh, there's some. That, sorry, buddy, that, knock on wood, some seasons where the weather just, didn't cooperate and there were a lot of blowouts. So, what I have done over the years is kind of collected a list of fun things to do. So people aren't sitting around in their hotel room. And we even now, William and I did he did the first and only scenic boat tour for our group. So should we be able to get out and cruise through the town of Beaufort, he and his mates there gave us a great history lesson of the area. You know, it's very rich in maritime history. So if there is a day we can't dive, one thing I like to do is help you find something else that will make your weekend fun.
And that is one thing with our 3-day trips, that it's very rare that we're actually losing the whole weekend. So it may be
Exactly.
a day that we need to do that. We
Yes.
still get 2 days of diving.
Yes, a lot of times people book just for the weekend, and if that's all you can do in your schedule, I mean, go for it because it's better than not going. But by trying to plan a 3-day weekend, especially with the 5.5 hour drive on the front end and the back end, I find that it just feels like you had a better getaway. You get more diving in, and if you lose a day, it still feels like you got some good diving in. So with our packages, it's 3 days of diving, 2 tanks per day. So boat tickets with for 2 tank dives, hotel accommodations, and your concierge service of the having the hotels booked and meals planned out for those who want to participate in group dinners and cookouts. So I hope you will join us. Here's the dates. It's the 4th weekend of every month, May through September. I think August is sold out now.
We have
One spot left. And the rest are filling up pretty quickly though. So welcome aboard. Thank you for listening. Oh, I have one other thing. If you're intrigued now and you want to learn more about the area, about some of the shipwrecks, here's a few books that if you're a reader and you might find interesting. Okay. Thank you. Let's go wreck diving. Any questions?
Very interesting. I didn't realize there were gonna be like tropical fish. And
Yeah, a
like
lot of
that in that
people,
area, too.
a lot of people are surprised by that. Yeah. And when you get up close and you narrow the field, it almost looks like you could be on a coral reef. Mhm. Anybody online have any questions?
No questions, just comment. To me, it's some of the best diving I've done. And I will keep coming back as long as I can climb the ladder and get out of the water.
Yay, that is my giant dive buddy right there. That, yeah.
I'm not giant, I'm only 2 meters.
Oh, yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about preparing seasickness,
Mhm.
medicine, things like that.
Yeah.
I know that you've had some experience with the preparation. And you mentioned scopolamine patches.
Yes.
Having that sort of ahead of time.
Oh,
but
yes.
The main thing, sort of getting that sort of in your system
So-
even the day before.
So I'm not authorized to give medical advice. However, by experience, I think I can say that what people seem to find most helpful is to start the day before with a half a patch and get some into your system. And then apply another half every day. So for some people, especially maybe like women our size, that seems to work. If it's not quite enough, then you can go to a whole patch. for some, the whole patch can be too much. Give you dry mouth and all that, but the scopolamine seems to be the best way to go. Yeah. And once you're sick, putting a patch on doesn't help at that point usually.
Glasses do.
But the glasses do. I wish I had my picture there. They are really unique. We try not to laugh at you when you wear them, but you won't care because you'll feel better.
Back on you.
I know.
The only time I ever tried wearing a patch was like on the first cruise ship I went on, and we hadn't even left yet, and I had that patch behind my ear, and I just felt so sick from the patch.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, screw this. Took it
Yeah.
off and I was fine
So
the next
try
week.
half next time. And the other thing that I found really helps people keep their patches on, because with especially if you're wearing a hood or whatever, is this clear Tagaderm. So you can find it at drugstores, but putting that on really makes your patch stay
And
way
it's
better.
also helpful so that you're not accidentally touching it.
Yes. So they don't sell it with the Tagaderm. That's just that's just something to if you're going to use the patches, that I'd recommend you try with it.
There's nothing oral you can take for.
Well, you can take Dramamine or Bonine, but again, you should start that early, at least like before you head to the dock. But some people also take one dose the night before and then another dose in the morning.
If you haven't used scopolamine before,
Try the
try
Dramamine.
it- Well, and try the scopolamine before you're heading down to Beaufort, right?
Oh,
Put that
good
over
point.
day
Good
to
point.
See some of the side effects.
Yeah, and a lot of doctors will tell you that. Just try out one to see how you feel before you are doing your adventure. Mhm.
How long does a patch last? 3 days?
Yes, but some people find that, well, and if you do the half a patch, if you put a half on every 24 hours, that seems to be a good way to keep the dose just enough that it works well without feeling those side effects you talked about. Mhm.
If you do the Dramamine, there's two kinds. There's the drowsy and the non-drowsy version. I've had a lot of success with the non-drowsy version, starting it the day before so far.
Good advice. Thank you, Alex.
And also, just let me second Chris's comment that if I had to not take any other dive trips ever again, this is the one I would do.
Very nice.
Tell us why.
For all the reasons that you just showed us.
Okay. Well, thank you. So the reason I put Alex on the spot was because I had to work on him for a couple of years to convince him to go. Because a lot of people think, "Oh, it's just a chunk of metal out there. I'm not that interested in history. Look at all these beautiful tropical reefs around. Why would I want to go do that?" Surprised, right, Alex?
That is true. It took me a long time to come around. But when I did, and when I went down there, I found that the wildlife and the whole experience was much richer than anything I had imagined. And I also thought the sharks were super cool, which I have to say, the first time I had not been around so many sharks, I kind of was a little nervous. And now I just can't wait to get in the water with them again.
Excellent. And Alex will be joining me in the water with the sharks in May. Yay.
Hey,
With Chris.
No,
Right.
the diving down there is just spectacular. And the fact that you get to take all your gear, throw it on the boat, and then jump in the water and get out. You don't have to climb on a beach and fight the waves or anything. You just go in. And the diving is, again, spectacular. There are so many things down there. And I dive with Marilou a lot, and she forces me to slow down because she's taking pictures and I'm looking, And there are so many things, little things there that I would not see if it wasn't for her making me, relax and chill. And it just, like I said, I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. And I may give up diving, in the Caribbean and diving, around the world, but as long as I can keep going down there. And yes, it's a pain in the ass, 5.5 hour drive there, 5.5 hour drive back.
But it's so worth it.
It,
So
how many years have I been doing this now? I don't know.
But I think that just shows that and I think that my last point is that I've been diving there on the same exact wrecks for over 30 years. I saw the Aeolus when it was all intact. And watching the evolution of the ships, you think, oh, aren't you bored? But no, it's always a slightly different experience. And I love watching the evolution of the shipwrecks, like after a big hurricane. I can't wait to get there and see, like, what did Mother Nature do this time? And it changes the experience. So, yeah, I don't get bored.
Well, as soon as I get bored, then we go to another wreck and it's all new again.
Yeah.
And there are so many wrecks down there, and I think I've dove on about 10 or 15 of them so far. And how many more are there? And the ones I've dove on, every time I dive on them, it's a slightly different event, different experience, whether it's because of visibility, the fish, or whatever, or even the people that we're diving with.
That's
They can make it an interesting trip, and just watching them sometimes.
So I hope that you will join our trips. I think to that point, when we have the whole boat and we kind of curate the trip, one of the other benefits is we can help decide where we go. And if we're really liking a wreck like the Carib Sea, and we want to stay there for 2 dives, we can do that because we have the majority rule. So that's kind of nice when you're with a group and you develop a little bit of camaraderie and pick out your dive buddies and what you want to accomplish those dives, whether it's photography or sightseeing or whatever. The way the weekend evolves, it's just a lot of great buddies. So if you come down there not knowing anybody, you will leave with many new dive friends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.